On a quiet lake in Georgia, a peaceful black fisherman cast his line, unaware that a storm was about to rise, not from the water, but from the hateful heart of a woman who thought she owned the world around her. This is the story of how one man's calm dignity unraveled a web of racism, power, and lies within a homeowners association that had long forgotten what justice meant. What started as a day of fishing would soon turn into a national scandal no one saw coming. Intro call to action. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and drop a like if you believe that no one should be judged for the color of their skin. This is one story you won't forget. Let's begin. The lake shimmered under the morning sun as Eric Thompson arrived at his favorite fishing spot, a small public dock just outside his new neighborhood, Lakeside Meadows. For him, fishing wasn't just a hobby. It was therapy, a way to ease his mind after long shifts at the auto shop. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with trimmed hedges, manicured lawns, and the sound of birds over the water. Eric had lived there for only 3 months, and while most neighbors waved politely, he had already sensed something that made his chest tighten whenever he walked past certain houses. He felt eyes on him, whispers fading just as he turned, but he brushed it off. Until that morning. As he cast his line, a white SUV screeched to a halt near the dock. Out stepped a woman in her late 50s, short blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her name was Karen Delaney, president of the Lakeside Meadows HOA. Eric didn't know her yet, but she knew him. She had been watching him since the day he moved in. In her mind, Eric didn't belong. The neighborhood had always been quiet, clean, and respectable, as she liked to remind people during HOA meetings. Now, in her twisted view, a single black man fishing on her lake disrupted that image. Without a word of greeting, she marched toward him, snapping photos with her phone. That single act, captured by a passing jogger, would soon explode across social media. But at that moment, Eric had no idea his calm world was about to collapse. The confrontation wasn't loud at first. Karen's words were sharp, accusatory, filled with entitlement. Eric, confused, tried to explain that the lake was public and open to all residents. But she didn't want explanations. She wanted control. By the time she stormed off, vowing to call the police and HOA board, Eric stood frozen on the dock, his fishing pole trembling in his hands. He didn't argue, didn't shout. But the humiliation cut deep. The next morning he found an HOA violation notice pinned to his door. Unauthorized use of private property. The handwriting was Karen's. It was only the beginning. In the following days, Eric became the target of subtle harassment. His trash cans were moved, his mailbox dented, his lawn marked with orange paint, supposedly inspection codes. Every time he left his home, Karen's SUV was somewhere nearby, watching, waiting. But Eric wasn't alone. A few neighbors, Sarah, a single mother across the street, and Tom, a retired firefighter, had seen what happened. They whispered about it, angry but afraid. "Karen runs this place like a queen," Tom said one evening. "People who stand up to her don't last long." And indeed, several neighbors had quietly sold their homes after run-ins with her. Eric, however, wasn't one to back down. He started documenting everything, every note, every photo, every interaction. The jogger who filmed their confrontation uploaded it to a local Facebook group, and within hours the clip went viral. A white woman screaming at a black man fishing peacefully. "You're not allowed here," she'd shouted. It was the kind of moment that ignited outrage nationwide. Reporters began calling the HOA. Karen panicked. She called an emergency meeting, her mask of control cracking. "We need to protect the image of this community," she said to the board, her voice shaking. But some members, tired of her tyranny, started to push back. "Maybe you went too far this time, Karen," one muttered. Yet behind her veneer of calm, Karen wasn't done. She filed a false police complaint claiming Eric had threatened her. Officers came to his home, questioning him on his porch while neighbors watched. The humiliation returned, sharper this time. Eric's hands trembled, not out of fear, but from the deep unfairness of it all. The officers, seeing no evidence, let him go. But the seed had been planted. Rumors spread through the neighborhood, some siding with Karen, others staying silent. That night, Eric sat alone on his porch, the lake glimmering under the moonlight. He had two choices: move out quietly or fight back. He chose the latter. The story spread beyond Georgia, reaching national headlines. Activists called for Karen's removal. while the HOA scrambled to contain the damage. But behind the scenes, Karen doubled down, sending anonymous letters, manipulating minutes from HOA meetings, twisting every fact to make Eric look like the aggressor. Yet the truth was on his side. Eric filed an official discrimination complaint with the state. As investigators began to probe, they uncovered years of misconduct, fines issued disproportionately to minority homeowners, threats, and falsified records. The HOA's once pristine reputation began to crumble. Still, Karen refused to back down. "He's trying to destroy everything we built," she shouted during a private meeting. But deep down, fear gnawed at her. She had gone too far and she knew it. Weeks later, as Eric walked to the lake again, people he'd never spoken to waved. Some even apologized. His quiet defiance had inspired others, but the story was far from over. Karen had one more move left, one that would push the community to the edge and expose everything she'd hidden for years. Chapter 2 began as the sun rose over lakeside meadows. A storm was brewing, not just in the sky but in the HOA boardroom. Karen had called a closed-door meeting, determined to remove Eric from the neighborhood by any means necessary. She drafted a motion to restrict non-members from lake access, disguising her racism under the veil of policy. But her plan leaked. Sarah, the single-mother neighbor, had been secretly recording HOA sessions for months, tired of Karen's manipulation. When she shared those recordings with Eric and the local press, they revealed Karen's true nature, comments laced with prejudice, mocking tone, and orders to keep the place pure. The recordings went viral overnight. The community erupted. Protesters gathered near the lake entrance holding signs. "Fishing is not a crime. End HOA discrimination. Karen must go." Local news crews swarmed. Karen barricaded herself in her home, blinds drawn, refusing interviews. Still, she plotted revenge. She sent threatening letters under fake names, urging Eric to leave before things get worse. But Eric, steady and calm, documented everything. When the police visited her again, this time it wasn't to question him. It was to question her. Yet Karen wasn't just fighting Eric. She was fighting exposure. Investigators discovered that HOA funds had been misused. Landscaping contracts awarded to her cousin's company, thousands of dollars unaccounted for. The board turned on her. A vote for her removal was scheduled. But on the day of the meeting, she arrived in full defiance, waving papers, shouting that Eric was ruining their neighborhood. The meeting devolved into chaos. Eric stayed silent, listening as residents spoke, some defending Karen out of fear, others demanding accountability. The vote was close. By a single vote, Karen was suspended pending investigation. The room erupted, not in celebration but relief. However, Karen's rage didn't fade. That night, under the cover of darkness, she vandalized Eric's property, spray-painted his fence, slashed his tires, and left a hateful note. She didn't realize a newly installed camera caught it all. The next morning, police arrested her in front of her house. The clip spread like wildfire. For the first time, she faced the consequences she'd evaded for years. But even as she sat in custody, the HOA's troubles deepened. State investigators widened their probe, discovering more victims. Families harassed, bullied, fined for fabricated reasons. The neighborhood's illusion of perfection shattered. Eric's quiet resistance had become a movement. By the time Karen was released on bail, her empire was gone. She returned home to find "for sale" signs across her street and neighbors refusing to speak to her. Still, she refused to apologize. "They'll see," she muttered to herself. "They'll all see." She wasn't done yet. Chapter 3 began with the HOA under reconstruction. A new interim board, led by Sarah and Tom, started reforms: transparency meetings, fair regulations, and diversity initiatives. The community began healing. Eric was finally at peace, or so he thought. Late one night, his phone buzzed. An anonymous number sent him footage, grainy, distorted, showing someone dumping paint into the lake. Attached was a message: "Hope you like your fishing spot now." It was Karen. She'd violated her probation, vandalizing the lake in one final act of spite. But this time, her plan backfired. Environmental authorities launched an investigation, leading to heavy fines and possible jail time. The community turned entirely against her. Yet amid the chaos, something remarkable happened. Eric's story was picked up by national media as a symbol of resilience. Interviews, donations, and letters of support poured in. He used the attention not for revenge but for education, hosting community talks about racism, empathy, and neighborhood unity. Lakeside Meadows slowly transformed. The lake, once a symbol of division, became a gathering place again. Families picnicked, children played, and people of all backgrounds fished together. Months later, Karen's trial began. The courtroom was packed. She sat stiffly, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. When the verdict was read, guilty of harassment, vandalism, and misuse of HOA funds, she showed no emotion. But the community she once ruled celebrated not in anger, but in closure. Eric stood outside the courthouse, feeling the weight lift. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, dignity, and peace. As he returned to the lake that evening, the sunset painted the water gold. He cast his line again, the gentle ripple echoing freedom. Karen moved away quietly, her name forever tied to the scandal she created. Lakeside Meadows rebuilt itself, not through power, but through unity. Outro call to action. If you believe that standing up against hate matters, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story. Because sometimes all it takes is one brave voice to turn a tide and remind the world that decency always wins.